of the ARBC, considering our new makeup and the things we're working on now and the things that we want to do in the future. We really can't do it without them. And with that, that concludes my report. Any questions from any of the board members? Entertain any questions about what's been going on or what you might like to know? Public comments? All right, next item on the agenda is a report by our legal counsel, Mr. Bankston.
Morning to everyone. Let me go over some items that are involved right here. The first is the status of an intergovernmental agreement with CPRA, DOTD, and PLD to use consultants. I have been working with Mr. Peterson. He wanted first to work and finish the intergovernmental agreement with CPRA, so we are waiting for drafts back. As you recall, we wanted to be able to use the already contractual agreements that may have been in place by any of these entities in order to make things move faster. So it's not going to be a intergovernmental agreement. It probably will be a what they call a MOU or MOA. So one of the things we're working on in reference to that. The other is you should have in your packet, we have had some very final discussions with CPRA. Mr. Peterson sent his last draft, and his last draft, there were just several items. Several of the items that I was interested in making sure got changed was to make it clear that if staff, the new executive director once selected, and Tony, or in fact anybody who's doing work that is for the $8 million that we're to receive, that those, if people keep their time, that those things could be potentially reimbursable. So those particular items, we've got that down to the last few items, and as you recall, the status of that was that once John had a chance to finally look at it, and we got that back from him on Monday with some additional comments, I think, Mr. Chairman, that you could maybe comment as to whether or not you think it's in a position now. The way the CPRA wants it, there's a process in which it has to be signed, and it's pretty much in final form, but I think we already have a resolution by the board that once it's acceptable by our chairman and our president, that it can now be signed. So we expect to have that particular document ready for signature. On that issue, and for y'all to be aware of, the supplemental appropriation bill 560 was amended by amendments in the House committee. And in the House committee, it changed the $8 million from $8 million to $100,000. We had some of the
Hold on. So say that again. So this intergovernmental agreement that you're talking about.
That's something different.
Okay.
The intergovernmental agreement is still $8 million.
Okay.
But actions were taken to change our $8 million to $100,000 in the supplemental appropriation bill. That bill is now been passed the full House and is over in the Senate. It is pending right now in Senate Appropriations, Senate Finance, excuse me, and that will be considered. As a result of that, I've reached out and spoken to Senator White's staff, and he indicated that he was going to see about putting that money back into the bill. But right now, it is only $100,000 for the master plan, which part of is already eaten up. So the item before the House Well, it took it out on a committee amendment. Now it's over in the Senate. It's pending in Senate Finance in House Bill 560, which is a supplemental appropriation bill. I think we need to do a little bit of discussions, reaching out to our legislative delegation on that particular issue and urge them, particularly on the Senate side, to put that money back in the bill.
So just to clarify for myself and maybe others, okay, so this $8 million is dedicated to help the ARBC, the new ARBC, develop a master plan and for annual plans
Correct.
per law.
Yes, sir.
Now that the $8 million has been removed by the representatives, I mean, I just don't get it.
I'll give you my thought on it. I think there's a little bit of discussions going on between the House and the Senate on the overall supplemental appropriations bill. And
Well,
I think I don't think the House members and Representative Bacala tried to explain it very clearly to the people in the committee. If you look, and you can go back in archives and see he made a pretty valiant effort to try to convince the chairman, Mr. Zarang, that money needed to be back in the bill.
so at this point, we're mandated to do something, and we potentially had the money set aside to do it, but now we don't.
Correct.
It was my understanding that the money that's appropriated on an annual budget like that, it's use it or lose it. So if you don't use it during that time period, you give it back. So it's the same thing with if they put it back in, it's good for 1 year. Just like the 100,000 they put in, that's good for a year. It's use it or lose it. So that 8 million was actually appropriated last year. So when it came to this year, we didn't use it. So they used CPRA, I think, used some of it, but we didn't get any of it. So that money's gone, and now they've replaced it with 100,000 out of the House. And like you said, it's up to the Senate but whatever they give us in a bill like this, it's use it or lose it. The ideal situation is to get some bank of money that is distributed over a period of time. So it's like 5 million and you get $1 million a year over the next 5 years. This is the way it was explained to me.
Well, the intergovernmental agreement that we have, we will not receive $8 million. We will in effect develop billing, submit it to CPRA, and CPRA will then pay us. And that's the process, right, Brent? I mean,
Yes, that's correct. I do think it's important to note that the money is not gone. There is a proposal to remove that came out of the House. That would have to pass the Senate for that to be the case. So there's an opportunity here, I think, for us all to speak with our legislators and make sure they're aware of the importance of keeping that money where it is. I don't want to overreact. I mean, it's a big deal, obviously, for the commission here, but we don't need to overreact about it just at this point. There's still a possibility that it will remain, and we can proceed as we've been, planning to proceed all along.
I will tell you, the Senate staff immediately knew about it. They immediately reached out to CPRA about this, and the senator's staff is well aware of this as an issue. So, and Senator White is chairman of Senate Finance, and he was the one who put it in last year. So,
Commissioner Harrell, you had a comment?
Mr. Bankston, if you'll educate me, please. If the $8 million is removed, then basically that was an unfunded mandate, so we're no longer responsible for doing the master plan or the annual plans. Is that correct?
no, sir. We're still responsible to do the plans. We're still responsible.
If it's an unfunded mandate, how can they require it?
Well, they may take the position that some of the funds that we presently have to be used for some of that. But I don't think anybody expects this commission to do this very extensive work without some funding. That's not gonna happen, I don't think.
I think Commissioner Bailey had a comment.
So Larry, what's the likelihood of the Senate putting the money back, but not lose it or use it within a year, allocated over a period of time?
Well, so as Commissioner Harris kind of described it, this is a supplemental appropriation bill. So it is a little bit like next year you need to use it, or it's rolled over to the next year. In other words, you're only going to get what you use. You see what I'm saying? So high likelihood, in my opinion, based upon knowing what's going on down there, that will be put back in. Will it be 8 million? I don't know the answer to that, but I think it will, that Senator White will put that back in the bill.
Commissioner Quintal, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you. So this concept of use it or lose it, what does that entail? Does that entail for the money to be under contract or to be spent? What is the definition of use it or lose it?
If it's
Under
under contract, it's obligated funds,
So
that,
if we got 5 million and we wrote 5 million worth of contracts, the money would be then secured and
Yes, sir.
used? That's what I need to know.
so
Thank you.
all subject to CPRA
Approval.
blessing all of it.
The- the-
Okay, so does this come back to this intergovernmental agreement that we're working on that we haven't been able to complete? And
It's separate, it's a separate issue, in my opinion, the intergovernmental agreement. Whatever the number ends up being, whether it's 8 million or whatever, this is ready to, with those additional comments, so that's ready to be signed.
Had this been ready before?
Wouldn't have made a difference.
Okay.
Wouldn't have made any difference
Okay.
whatsoever.
But I'd like to, if I may,
Yes,
Mr. Chair,
please.
the agreement creates that bona fide obligation of the funds. And so we're ready to go. We're good to sign. We have to clean up a few of the comments that Mr. Mason was mentioning a minute ago, and we're ready to get that signed. But it had no bearing on what happened in the legislature.
Mr. O'Neill.
Mr. O'Neill, Commissioner O'Neill?
Just, it's fine, Mister's fine, doesn't matter. Gary will work too, John. Is there any kind of ETA on how long it's gonna take us to clear up these final comments and get everything signed between CPRA and ARBC?
We're good. We addressed our comments, just like Larry pointed out, that we wanted to make sure that any of the time that perhaps the administration for ARBC works dedicated towards this master plan could perhaps be recovered through this as billable hours, so to speak.
And would we recommend waiting until we have that IGA signed before we do outreach to our delegation, or do we wanna just call them as soon as we leave here? Okay.
As soon as you leave, as soon as you leave here.
Larry, the 100,000 that did get put in, does that go through CPRA also?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It stays the same. All right, the next item, if you recall, in your packet, there is a memorandum. It's this document here. You see this? If you recall, Representative Carter asked that we provide the commission members a memo about the natural and scenic river system and the process of it. This was as a result of Representative Hodges' Bill 465. It's a lot of material, but it describes the process and recommendations of how you get in and how you get out. I will tell you that House Bill 465 remained in Natural Resource Committee, and there will not be probably enough time for that bill to get through the entire process. But this is the requested report from Representative Carter at our last meeting to provide an update about how the process works. Also, yes, sir.
Commissioner Harrell, you have a comment, sir?
Yes, that bill was brought up for the simple fact of removing waterway, storm-related debris from scenic waterways. There has been disagreements with Wildlife and Fisheries on the amount of debris you can take out of a scenic waterway. And up until just recently, as of 2 weeks ago, their interpretation of the rules were you could only remove 50% of the debris that's in the scenic river. However, after a 2-hour meeting the other day, we've got a different understanding of the rules. So now their interpretation is you remove 50% of the debris that was in there prior to a storm and 100% of the storm-related debris. So that's a huge difference there. We can move forward with that, and I don't think I would ever ask to remove the scenic rivers from the parish as long as we could remove that much debris. It's all about protecting the public. So that's what came out of that meeting.
So as I understand, this is not stripping the river down of all of the fallen trees and debris, because some of that's habitat.
It
And-
is,
but it-
absolutely.
But what you're talking about is removal of storm debris.
I'm talking about you can remove up to 50% of pre-storm debris because trees fall constantly.
Erosion, bank
Yes.
erosion.
So that you remove. They don't want you to touch a black log or anything like that. They don't want you to mess up the habitat, but you can get up to 50% of pre-storm debris and 100% of storm debris. So that's huge.
So at some point, somebody's gonna have to, I guess, survey the waterway and determine what's eligible or not eligible, pre-storm type.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
gotcha.
pay good money to have an environmental company go do that.
I know all about it.
The next item, I'm going to skip over the resolutions for a second. The next item is the legislative report. That's this document here. I'll briefly go over kind of what the status of legislation that I saw that was this House Bill 406 by Representative Mincy involves the I-12 corridor and that particular issue. The bill is presently pending in the Senate. House Bill 514 by Mincy. That particular bill, which involves the issue of the proposition involving the tax money, that bill has not gotten out of the House. It has been subject to call on several occasions, but it passed out of committee, but it's never passed the full House. The next bill is House Bill 409 by Representative Edmonds. This involves the stormwater utility services. If you recall last year, Representative Zarang passed a bill that created the stormwater utility system, which would allow municipalities and parishes to pass by a vote in the councils of a stormwater utility. Like in Baton Rouge, we have a sewer fee. This would be a stormwater fee. The bill by Representative Edmonds requires now that this would require a vote of the people. It has some certain mandates as to the length and term of it. That bill passed out of the House and is currently pending in the Senate committee. The next bill, which I really went over, is House Bill 465 by Hodges. That bill remains in committee. And finally is Senate Bill 42, which is the statutory creation of the Louisiana Watershed Management Council, 2 statutes. As you recall, we have been designated, ARBC has been designated as now Region 9, and we are in fact the steering committee for that committee. That bill is presently pending on the House floor. That bill is, I would expect, getting ready to pass. I'll answer any questions y'all have on legislation if you have any.
If possible, Mr. Bankston, if we could go back to House Bill 516, just to clarify what that entails and where that's at. 514, I'm sorry,
Right.
514?
Okay, 514, if you recall, this was the bill in which the remaining funds that we have for the Comite Diversion Canal project, which is a dedicated source of funds, this was an attempt to, in effect, allow for this commission to place on the ballot a vote to, quote, undedicate and allow the funds to be used for other purposes. We talked about this a little bit previously. This is a issue in which there is basically a contract between the public and the commission that dedicated these funds and limited the source of them only to the Comite Diversion Canal. This was an attempt to allow for a greater flexibility in reference to that. The bill was brought up initially in the House. There was a vote for some amendments, and those amendments failed, and it has been placed on what they call subject day. And in fact, it is listed for the 16th, I think actually today, for a potential vote, but that's been being done every day. Right now, I don't know whether or not that bill would or would not get out of the House, but we only have 2 weeks left. So to get that passed and done, I think is highly unlikely.
So the last amendment to this bill is to not just rededicate the money to be used to take it from, to put up to the voters, to take it from the Comite River, which is not complete, and the prices just got doubled, and to use that abroad, to use that leftover money abroad now. But now it's been amended to give it back to the taxpayers as a rebate, so to speak.
That amendment failed, so I don't know if that amendment, it was a detailed amendment. It failed on committee, but so the bill is in the same posture it was as it was introduced. And if you go on what I sent you, these links, it'll show you what the engrossed bill was. So that's the status of the bill as it passed committee. It did not have a lot of debate in the House committee. It has been on the floor. There have been a number of parishes that have sent letters in opposition to this. So I can't speak to whether or not Mr. Mincy is going to proceed one way or the other.
Commissioner Harris?
The Senate Bill 42, what that does, just to recap, the Watershed Initiative was created by governor order, and this same thing they tried to run this through last year, that makes it a permanent bureaucracy. And that is in fact what it is. It is a huge bureaucracy that's between the money and getting the work done. And it's just like the 1.2 billion that, excuse me, that came from the feds that Garrett always gets credit for. That came in and it's being funneled through Office of Community Development, and they meter that out, just like we talked about round two. $100 million out of 1.2 billion, they're metering out $100 million statewide. And meantime, the bureaucracy that goes on and all of these things, and any of y'all that served on Region 7 that we were in before we got carved out realizes that they're bringing in green consultants from Washington, D.C. That's how they're spending the money. And talking to our local coordinator, what is your plan? It was nothing to do with water retention, flood control, flooding. It's we're here to help the people and to give people that have, the exact words, people that haven't had a voice at the table, we want them to come and participate. That money was put here to keep people from flooding. And this is a bureaucracy that just doesn't get it. And what this is going to do is make it a permanent structure. As soon as we get a new governor, the new governor can reorganize that, disband it, they can do whatever they want to. But if this goes through, it's here. So if we've got anybody that's got any influence with, it's in the House now, so talk to your representative. This is something that is not good for us, it's not good for the state, it's not good for water. So I urge you to contact your representatives to defeat that.
And
Mr. Clark, if I could ask Mr. Bankston a question about SB 42. If that bill goes through, it would push LWI Region 9, which is actually Amite River Basin Commission, underneath the Division of Administration. I know we've had some conversations about it. Can you speak to whether that would dilute our control and our level of power we currently have as a commission?
so the bill itself, that there's going to be, as it's proposed, is there is a statewide council. All created boards and commissions must fall under a specific department, DOTD, CPRA. This particular bill places that council under the Division of Administration. It does not place the local councils that are basically created by this act. It does not place those under the, we would not be, whoever Region 9 is ultimately would not be under the Division of Administration. The state council is under the Division of Administration because all newly created boards, commissions have to be under one of the specific departments. That's just a constitutional requirement.
So the newly created council would be underneath DOA, but not the actual LWI regions themselves?
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you, I appreciate it. That was a confusing aspect for me.
No, and that's what I was referring to. It's just another layer of bureaucracy that doesn't have anything to do with what we're trying to get done, except to suck a bunch of money off before it gets to us to actually get projects done.
I'll point out, talking to Paul Sawyer last week, this thing flew through the Senate where it was originally reported out of the committee favorably, went through the House. I don't think it had a single comment against it either. Paul used a phrase I won't repeat here, but he's like, I'll just say it flew through. So he was definitely encouraging us if we had any kind of issues with it to be paying attention to it. So.
And it did pass out of the House committee without any objections, as I recall. The final item that I have is I was directed to, and this is this document here, it's referred to as public notice. This is, we must have an auditor in place before the end of August. And this, I've been working with Louisiana Legislative Auditor's Office on the specific language that needs to be included. We can select an auditor, but the auditor must come off a list that is provided by the Legislative Auditor's Office who have been certified. There are approximately 30 different entities or companies or businesses in Baton Rouge. There are 4 or 5 in Ascension Parish, and there is 1 in Livingston Parish that would all basically potentially qualify. But we need to consider moving on this particular action here. It has some criteria. It would need a committee for us to evaluate any proposals, and we would need a deadline for them to present to us. So I ask the president to open that up for discussion because we do need to move on this particular item.
So do we have any board discussion in regards to the auditor? I think the auditor that we have has been doing a pretty good job. Tony?
He retired.
That's
Okay.
So
Yeah, he's retired.
so we have Mr. Shoptaw, who is our CPA and works with Tony and prepares financial statements on a monthly basis. Separate and distinct from that is we have to have a legislative auditor approved to do the annual audit. So this is what this selection is about. Yeah.
So I suggest, get a motion to
Yeah,
proceed with this?
yes, and I think our treasurer knows some of those auditing firms and has, do you have a recommendation on that? Or
Somebody from St. John Parish, I'd like to recommend. St. John.
Well, you have to have,
Go ahead, Commissioner Harrell.
My understanding is we have to advertise, correct? Yes.
Okay, so this is a public notice to advertise.
Yes, let's go ahead and advertise. I'm for
Okay,
that.
so
Make that motion.
can I get a motion from Commissioner Harrell, second from Commissioner Rayford? All in favor? Any opposed? All right,
The only thing I do need from the commission is we need to put a deadline of when this submission, so, if we can get these out to all the different, you want to say, June 30th? Is that okay to work with that, everybody? Okay, we'll fill that in and get this notice out. And I've skipped over, I have prepared a number of resolutions, and that, y'all can pick that up, which is the ARBC resolutions in support of the number one priority flood projects. I've given a set of potential resolutions to Tony, but that's an item that's showing up at the end. We really don't need to take any action on the legislative report, just to accept it. And we've already taken action on the advertising for the auditor's position. So that being said, I'll answer any questions anybody may have.
any questions from the board? We've covered a lot of material. Commissioner O'Neill.
Have we made any progress on a procurement process or procedure for the commission?
Well, as you know, we were attempting to use the process that is in place with CPRA, PLD, as well as DOTD. I have a framework of using the information actually that you gave me on GOSEPs, which I think gives all the details on how we should proceed. So we have in place right now a procurement code by rule, but which we've used in the past, but I think it needs to be modified, and maybe we can work to resolve that.
Any more comments? Any public comments on our legal counsel's report? Okay, proceeding on to the next item on our agenda, under old business. We have project subcommittee report. Anything?
I'm going to leave this mic on for a while, I guess. So our committee met initially. We got projects from, I believe, all parishes except for St. Helena. I do want to point out, we've got a call in to Roderick, who's their OSEP director in St. Helena Parish, asking them if they're planning to submit anything for LWI. We don't have anything from them yet, but we're pending a response from St. Helena. I did want to go around and just make sure there's a spreadsheet on everybody's desk. This spreadsheet's not finalized. It's not a list of just number ones. But I do want to point out that after conferring with several members, representing several parishes here on the commission, what you would almost call the number one of number ones here is missing. It has actually already been updated on the spreadsheet on our SharePoint site. It'll be distributed after adjournment. It's the Manchac project, I believe is what's colloquially being called. It'll be submitted with the rest of these projects. But what I thought we would do is we'd go around to each parish, let them mention their number one priority, and then we would take an action as we went on a per parish basis on which ones to actually issue take official action as commissioners on. If anybody's got any objection to that, I believe that'll be enough. Mr. Bankston, if we go around the room, sort of a round robin per parish, you can then use those actions to issue those letters of support. And then Mr. Haas with CPRA, we can give you guys those letters once they're printed, along with the packets of information that we've been submitted. And if y'all see any holes or anything that's in there, any additional information, please communicate with our committee. We'll be sure to get it to you, so. Without any further ado, if y'all just want to go around the room, we'll start with, if you want to start, John, with Iberville, if y'all have a number one.
Okay. I could start with Iberville. Our number one project is going to be the Bayou Manchac Regional Project.
That's fine.
It's regional flood risk reduction. It's going to entail a couple of different phases, but primarily, it's been identified that Bayou Manchac drains is draining poorly. There's a lot of debris. It hasn't been maintained. It's a scenic, historic stream, and so that's been lifted to allow for maintenance of the stream, limited to just that. So for Iberville Parish, all of East Iberville, which includes Sunshine, Carville, St. Gabriel, those whole 2 points all has to drain into Bayou Manchac by way of Alligator Bayou. So we're dependent on Bayou Manchac as an outfall to flow our waters to give relief to the city of St. Gabriel and Carville, Gillis Long, all of those, a lot of petrochemical facilities. We're subject to flooding there. We're challenged. And if Bayou Manchac is high and it won't flow out, we're subject, I mean, we're faced with flood challenges. And a lot of times what we've noticed is by looking at the USGS gauges up and down Bayou Manchac and on the Amite River, the Amite River can be as low, has fallen to its natural levels, say 7 foot lower than Bayou Manchac, and we can't figure out why Bayou Manchac is perched in the air, so to speak. It's just not draining. So identified a lot of debris on the bottom of the channel. The channel is half full, even before it starts raining. So to us, that means a lot. I think another part of the project is to look at Ward's Creek. Ward's Creek is known to drain up to 75% of metropolitan Baton Rouge. It starts at the state capitol and picks up all of the water from there to Government Street, to Corporate Boulevard, to Essen Lane, Bluebonnet, all the way down, and it empties into Bayou Manchac. So it too has to drain through Bayou Manchac. And the alignment where Wards Creek enters into Bayou Manchac, it's pointing upstream, so to speak. Downstream would be towards the Amite River, which Bayou Manchac empties into. So part of the project is to realign it to where the mouth points downstream, where it can flow out a lot more easily. And there's some other obstructions. Part of this project is also to look at the LA 427 bridge. Y'all might know it as Old Perkins Road in front of Santa Maria. That bridge is extremely low, and it impedes the flow of the water. You can see the stage difference above and below it. So for us, Iberville Parish, this is definitely a priority.
So President Clark, well, actually, I should probably direct that. First off, thank you very much for that, for describing the project. Mr. Bankston, I think there are several parishes here that would probably consider that their number one also. Would those parishes want to just say, we want to second this as their number one, and then just take action as each on that project, and then we'll just move to the parishes that don't consider that their number one and move forward?
That's up to the commission now.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's just go ahead and get our number ones identified here today.
That's fine.
And that way we can, once we select our number one projects, the board would like to provide the resolutions from the board for those projects in support of those projects.
Will we need to take a vote? I mean, does we want to make a motion to take a vote
Yes.
to officially support?
Yes.
Okay. Do any parishes at this time want to second, support, or identify their number one project as a parish as also sharing that priority?
Commissioner Rayford?
Yes, I want to state that, number one, I totally support the Manchac project. I know when we had our meetings, there was a lot of discussions about a lot of projects. And quite frankly, I was pretty much assured that we were already going to be entitled to, I mean, it's laid out to do the Manchac project. But I wanted to be sure everybody from the commission knows that is our number one project. It does benefit East Baton Rouge Parish. But I also want to stipulate that some of the things that are happening in Baton Rouge are going to be retention and detention facilities that we're doing along our major waterways, and that will help also reduce that flow and let it go from a grading standpoint downstream like it's supposed to without impacting as much to Iberville, Livingston, and also Ascension Parish. That certainly is our number one project, clearing it. We've done that, but there's some more work that needs to be done, particularly from Bayou Fountain back west to pick up a lot of the area for Iberville Parish and also EBR. So certainly our number one project from East Baton Rouge Parish is the man shack.
Ascension, did you want President Coitman or Commissioner Coitman?
Do you want me to start my number one, or do you want me to talk about Manchac?
If you'd like to support Manchac, I think we're talking about Manchac, but you're also able to discuss your number one at any point in time, whatever.
Yeah, sure. So Manchac is my number two. My number one is the New River Stormwater Management Pump Station Project. Manchac cannot be the only solution. Anytime the Amite River or the basin itself is inundated with floodwaters, you have a backwater event possibly. And so you have to have another outlet or way to get that water out of Manchac, or at least not to contribute to it. So what this particular project does, it puts a pump station at New River at the Mississippi Levee in Ascension, and then there's a diversion structure at Highway 74. What that allows that to do is it allows us to pump New River down and then accept water from Spanish Lake, which ultimately ends up in Manchac as well as Summer Bluff Swamp, reducing those elevations and providing an alternative. Sending that water into the Mississippi River, this is the only project listed that removes water from the Amite River Basin completely. And in doing so has the benefit to each of those parishes downstream. And so when we have a high water event such we had in May 2021, the flooding area with the aqua dams and all that goes along with the legalities of that, this provides not have the Spanish Lake water or the Bluff Swamp contribute to Manchac, allowing it to recede quicker, faster, and then hopefully not having to employ different tactics or structures such as the aqua dams. So when we're not taking water from Spanish Lake or Bluff Swamp, we have the opportunity to split the Marvin Bro Basin in half, and then all the water in the Geismar, Dutchtown, west of Gonzales, that water would then also be put into the Mississippi River, therefore not contributing that water to the Amite River Basin, which would possibly affect St. James and Livingston. So at any given time that this is utilized, it has benefit from a regional standpoint. And so this has been looked at from the Corps of Engineers probably 2 decades ago. It just was, the funding wasn't possible at that time. And so it just becomes very evident as we continue to put pumps along Alligator Bayou Road that there has to be another solution. And I believe this is it. And so it's one of the few projects that have a 5-parish benefit, and where Ascension Parish is willing to accept the O&M, which is critical. Most of the other parishes with pump station options did not want to have or take on the responsibility of the operation and maintenance, and so that's a huge part. That will be on Ascension Parish's nickel, and so, but the other parishes will benefit. And so I think that's a big part of this. We just need the upfront funding to go ahead and start the project. This would also protect the Highway 30 corridor, which creates jobs throughout the region, not just for Ascension Parish, but every surrounding parish. So in addition, there is an economics to this project as well. It even has the ability to affect the Women's Correctional Facility, other governmental buildings such as that. And so overall, it's just a huge project. It will change drainage in the region. That's the magnitude of this project. It's massive. It's huge. And so that is our number one. But Manchac would be our number two.
Thank you, President Coitman. Mr. Harrell, did you want to go next from Livingston Parish to speak to your number ones, or I know.
Absolutely, I do. As you can see, I have something on there to remove sediment from basically Manchac or Port Vincent area to the lake. That is, in fact, our number one project. Please understand that Bayou Man Shack is a good project. I do support it. However, you're dumping water on us. So help us, help the other parishes. We'll take the extra water, but give us a way to get it on out to the lake. And like Fred brought up, he's got other waterways he's working on. They also, like he said, dump into Man Shack, which dumps into Livingston Parish and Ascension. We border each other, so that is my number one project by far.
Can you tell us, Commissioner Harrell, a little bit about, so you're talking about the Amite River from Port Vincent, just south of where Bayou Manchac empties into the Amite River to remove the sediment. So there's, apparently there's a sediment problem in the channel from that point south.
There is, and we've already had Dewberry survey it a good while back, and it's just sediment that's come in from up north over the years, and it's got some high spots. Not, the whole thing is not loaded down with sediment, but we need to clean it out all the way to the lake to get that water flowing. And that will also give an offset to take the negative impact from PLD doing the Weir project. Because if they do it without clearing out the Amite River, it's gonna negatively impact about 2,500 structures. So we feel that taking the sediment out will offset that as well.
So this is not technically a dredging project, it's removing the sediment from the channel to its natural bottom?
That's absolutely correct.
And what would you be doing with the sediment?
We'll have to see how we can get it permitted. We have several ideas. Let's see what the Corps of Engineers and Wildlife and Fisheries and everyone will allow us to do with it.
Commissioner Rayford, you got a comment on this
Yeah.
project?
Well, since the dredging issue came up, I just want to also explicitly dictate or indicate that, number one, that the Manchac project, we don't need to dredge the entire Manchac project either. There are hot spots and low places in there that you have to work it out and get the drainage through the system. And I just want, for clarification purposes, to understand, because there are a lot of people, when you use the word dredge, they go
They think of that-
ballistic.
they
And
think of a
I
clam
want to be
bucket,
sure people
drag
know that.
line.
That from our project standpoint, it will be, we've looked at the survey data, we do know that there's some high spots along that channel from Everville Parish all the way to the Amite River, and that's what we want to concentrate on, trying to get the water out of there.
Okay, East, please, Shannon.
I was going to say, if anybody else has any questions about Mr. Harrell's, or Commissioner Harrell's project, otherwise, Mr. Parker, I believe you have one from the Feliciana area you want to share with us.
Yes, I do. You know, this is something that we've been working on for some time, and I've kind of questioned Fred about what he is doing in the southern part of the Comet River, and it appears that they're on their way. So I fully support what Fred is doing. In turn, I've started work on the upper Comet and several of its tributaries. This will help increase, once the weir is built, to feed that excess water back into the Comet diversion canal. Will reduce flooding upstream tremendously. We've had back in 16 on up through Ida, we've had portions of the upper Comet River where 2 neighborhoods have flooded with 8 foot of water. So this will reduce that flooding in those areas. So I fully support what the commission is trying to do. So, and that is our number 1 project of the upper Comet and its tributaries.
Commissioner Parker, just for clarification, so you're looking at helping remove the storm debris from channels that feed into the upper Comet that has not been addressed in probably how long?
a long time,
Couple
But it-
decades.
I would imagine.
So
But
it's
you know,
piled up.
since Ida, there's in those tributaries,
So,
so it's to get that out. But now that, you know, they've changed the rule, 50%, then 100%, it will greatly affect those neighborhoods that flooded continuously.
you know, a lot of people don't realize, you know, East Feliciana's, it's a ways from here, but landmark-wise, proximity-wise, town-wise is town of Wilson. You got,
Well, that would affect the upper Comite affects portions of Norwood, Wilson, on down through Clinton,
Jackson.
Jackson, on down through the northern part of East Baton Rouge.
So these little small towns would benefit,
Yes,
and they flooded? in the
they have
past?
flooded.
And so I think St. James is, if anybody else has any questions about that project, I think we'll move on to St. James. I believe they have one mentioned here that's a hydraulic control structure and pumping station in St. James with an interconnected levee. I believe Mr. Weber presented this project. That continues to be y'all's number one priority, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If there's any questions about any of these projects, we'll share, the project inventory committee has summaries on all of these, and they're on a OneDrive, which anybody has access to on the committee. After this, we're happy to share those summaries with anybody if you've got any curiosity about them. But last but not least, I wanted to mention, we've reached out to St. Helena. I called Major, also called Roderick, who's their OSEP director, I believe you know him, Mr. Harrell, asking to see if they were going to submit anything for round two. We did not hear back from Representative Carter. He's not here today, but I did reach out to St. Helena, and I'll make a couple of other attempts to continue to contact them about potential projects as well. But for the most part, those projects listed, I don't know if we just want to take an action as a whole to support those number ones, and then have Mr. Bankston go ahead and work with Ms. Tony to issue those letters of support from this organization, unless anybody has any other questions or comments.
So can I get a motion, Commissioner Harrell?
I'd like to say I'll go ahead and call a few jurors on my way home and call the OSEP director.
Yeah.
There, they have a few waterways that they need to remove debris in.
St. Helena?
Yes, they had, just get it out in the open, they had NRCS funding.
Yeah, they did.
They recently lost it about 2 weeks ago, and it was due to the fact they didn't have the cost share to cover it. So if we could submit, I'll help them put a package together, and you can help, and let's get it, those waterways submitted, so they can get 100% funding.
St. Helena's a low to moderate income area primarily.
Yes.
And they had 90% of the funding for the cost to do this, and they couldn't.
They could come up with a cost share, so it would, we could take the same package and turn it in. I'll get it to you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Otherwise, does anybody want to, oh, Clint?
Yeah, no, I'd like to take action on these number ones and proceed,
I'll second that.
yes.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor. Commissioner Quintmore and Commissioner O'Neill seconded it. Can I get a roll call to support these number one projects that have been mentioned here today at the meeting? Ms. Tony?
Okay, Mr. Bailey? Yes. Representative Carter's absent. Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Quintmall?
Yes.
For Rick Webb? Yes. Ms. Polito? Yes. Ms. Fitch is absent. Mr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Rayford?
Yes.
And Mr. Shelton's absent. All right, passed.
Just want to say thank you for all the parishes that worked and helped us and participated with this on the committee, at the committee level.
Would you please?
Quick question. Do you want separate resolutions for each of these, or do you want?
Yes, Mr. Bankston, we want separate resolutions from the board for each individual project.
Mr. Haas, would that be preferable to y'all rather than having just one blanket? Y'all would rather separate for each one?
It's really 6-1, half dozen other, as far as we're concerned, but that's fine. That works.
I think,
And also too, I would recommend that each parish provide a letter of support for these individual projects.
That was a request, I believe that was part of Chip's original request, but I would also point out, an astute commissioner may have whispered under his breath here that just because there's a diverse set of funding options out there, I think an individual letter of support for each one of these projects might benefit, just for some reason, if something falls through the cracks later on, we can submit that letter as some type of supporting documentation for a different funding source, or another bite at the apple. So, Mr. Larry, I know it might be a little more difficult to write 6 or 7 of these letters, but if you could write them individually, I think it would probably be best. So.
I have drafts already given to Tony for everything already, except the, I don't have Manchac, but I'll add that. I just need some further details.
I can get those for you. Other than that, I can shift gears to creating a GIS website.
So, one more thing, we've jumped through the project list, and there's been projects that involved since the process, like St. Helena, have not been originally included, that have been included, and it's come to my attention that some of the projects that are on there, it's like, where did they come from? And then also, I think from ARBC's perspective, is, it's obvious that the sand and gravel mines operations on the upper Amite River is and has been a problem for a long time. At some point, we're going to need to figure out what to do to address that. And Commissioner Harris he's been looking at this. He was on the former RBC board, and they were aware of this problem. But I think under the situation that it was operated, the cost and the funds, the limited funds, restrictiveness, they were really shackled, couldn't really address this glooming problem. Commissioner Harris, did you want to explain, an idea of what you might have in mind for the upper Amite River?
Well, we've all got to set our priorities on this, and this is an excellent first bite at the apple on #1 projects. PLD has several things that they put on there. Ascension has some other things, but as far as discussion on the #1, I think this is a good run at it. One of the things that, again, with some of these others down the road, we do need to look at, like Mark's talking about, dredging the lower Amite. We need to address where that's coming from. And plus, there's some major opportunities for retention, just like Fred's doing in EBR. No, it's not a Darlington Reservoir, but Dewberry's already done some studies on retention in the abandoned gravel pits, and that is, there's some real benefit for everybody south of that. So that was something I just wanted to make sure that's on our radar. I don't know that this comes as a #1. I'm not a parish, so I don't get to put a #1 on here.
Okay, so Gary, let's go ahead and add this to the list, perhaps. Okay, Commissioner Harrell, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I do support that. I think that ARBC needs to get in a position to where they start looking at projects themselves. So I think the project you're speaking of, if nothing else, apply for a study, scoping project or something. Let's do some engineering to see what can be done up there, and then maybe come back and do phase 2 on the construction later. But I think this would be an excellent project for ARBC to take on and put as their #1 project.
Exactly, that's what, because it's not a parish, but we would do that ourselves, and it would, we would implement it, from the ground up. There was a study in 1995 on the silt. PLD was working on that. I'm new at this. I don't understand why I could not get any information on what they were working on for over a year. I talked to Monica, I talked to Glenn, couldn't get any information back and forth on that. And now some of this that came in was almost ludicrous, where $472 million to take silt and go put it back where it came from. We have a potential for retention in that area. We don't need to pass that up because that's a moonscape up there. And like I said, Dewberry's already done some preliminary work on that, and that's something we could take ourselves and do. So that would be under, not a parish, but ARBC.
Commissioner Harris, are you free tomorrow in the afternoon? Because if you've got a
No,
good
but
idea
I
on the
will be
scope,
the
I can
next day.
I can easily work with you to develop a scope and fill out the information we're requesting here and to get it in under the
Okay.
gun. If we just want to add that as a, go ahead and have Mr. Bankston also write a letter of support for that. I can work something up with you if you have an idea of the scope that you're looking for to get it submitted on behalf of ARBC, as I think
Yeah.
Commissioner Harrell is actually speaking about.
Yeah,
Want to add that, you need a vote to add.
yeah, let's, okay, can I get a motion on the floor here to add this to our list?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Commissioner Frafer.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Bailey. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay,
So I need
motion passed. Now,
Well, congratulations, this is the first ARBC project, so I'm proud to see that.
need the details.
if we can get the details worked out. and,
Mr. Bankston, what I'll do is if I can square some time away tomorrow with Mr. Harris in the PM, I'll work something up and then I'll immediately get it over to you, a high-level scope document, and then I'll finish fleshing out the rest of it so that we can get it to Mr. Haas and CPRA with the rest of this stuff.
Just from my past experience, I believe this is a tremendous opportunity, looking at ways to repurpose these abandoned gravel mines. There's a lot of benefit for retention, perhaps down the road recreation. There's multiple benefits. And, a river, the Amite River, as it comes from high to low downstream, from north to south, and it goes through a section, it's kind of like going from upstairs to downstairs. And every meander that is removed from the river is like taking a step out of the staircase. And in this case, that's what's happened through this section.
5 miles.
5
It's been
miles,
shortened by 5 miles.
5 miles of the Amite River has been removed. And so as that water's coming from north to south, headwaters beginning up above Liberty, Mississippi, it's gaining some momentum. And as it gains hydraulic energy, the stream banks can't take it, so it makes the channel unstable. And as it becomes more unstable, there's more and more bank erosion. And as the bank erodes, all of that sediment fills the channel. That sediment moves downstream and creates problems that Livingston Parish, Commissioner Harrell is going to try to address on the lower Amite. So I believe that this is an opportunity to repurpose this abandoned looks like a lunar landscape. So for multiple uses and benefits and maybe flood reduction. Sorry, just had to throw that out there. All right. Moving on the agenda, Executive Director Committee Report. Approved job description and qualifications. If you look in your packet, I think you've been provided the latest, greatest rendition of what we're working on for the Executive Director. Currently, we don't have an Executive Director. We're going to try to hire one, and in doing so, considering our new board makeup and what we want to do now and in the future, I think this is a very important role. So we've come together with a description. We got responsibilities. We have preferred qualifications. We've listed our benefits package and so forth. And there's been several versions that we worked through. I think everybody's commented on it, and I think we're at a point now where This is about as good as we get. Commissioner Quintmont, do you have a comment?
Well, I was head of the committee, unfortunately, due to the time constraints. Commissioner O'Neill worked a lot on this, so I want to thank him for all his hard work, because I don't think we could have gotten to this point without his dedication. With that being said, this is such a high-profile job. And when you look and review the duties, I guess what concerns me is eventually we're going to need to have a company come in and be our program manager for our projects or engineering or scoping, grants, everything. And so I would like to, I guess, briefly, at least for a month, put this search on hold and consider not hiring an executive director, but yet putting those duties into a consultant, putting out an RFQ, and seeing if we can have a company do these abilities. And then if she agrees, of course, some of the inner office stuff, if Tony would like to take those and be compensated for those, that we would need to fill a $130,000 to $150,000 position, that actually we would rely on a company. And if at any time, that would be an annual contract at any time that we felt that this company wasn't serving us, that we could actually choose another company to step in and play that role. When I look at this description, a lot of companies do this. They certainly do it for us. I know they do it for other parishes. We have an ADAPT program to where this company comes in, they've created 30 projects for us. It is the next 10 years. They scope the financing for us. They apply for our grants. They do the engineering when we request it per task order. And I think that would be set up very similar. They would require a task order approved by this board to move forward with any particular project that we requested of them. And that would keep the financials in order so that we would never go over budget. With what's allocated for that. But I think in what we're looking to pursue, and as we're looking to move forward with us having our own projects, we're going to have experts on our side to work us through those process and apply for grants and manage the projects, work with the consultants, and have hands-on daily. And we do it here in Ascension, and I know other parishes do it. So I'd just like for us to get together as a committee, discuss that option, look at who would do what, and possibly not hire this particular position, but hire a company to fill those duties instead. So I just want to throw that out there before we pull the trigger, because once we do, we're probably on that path for a while. And I mean, it would be just for us to hire someone and then change course months after, deciding to go a different route. So before we pull that trigger and actually go out, I'd like to look at that option, because I think there's plenty of companies here locally that have those abilities. They do it already. And so I just want to look at those options before we move too far ahead. That's my
Commissioner O'Neill,
comments.
did you have a comment?
I just wanted to ask a question, maybe Mr. Bankston knows. Are our bylaws set up where we wouldn't have to hire an executive director, or does it say we have to have an executive director? How does that work within the bylaws of our commission?
It does not say.
It does not specify?
All you have in your bylaws, you do refer to executive secretary, but you also have that's in the statutory language of the bill. So there's no prohibition that I can think of. I'd have to go back and review it, but there's no prohibition to do what the commissioner has suggested.
Commissioner Bailey?
Clint, the thing that you're talking about, I've thought about that seriously, because when you're a consulting firm, the consulting firm have many engineers working in the venue, and some of these projects are going to need different type of engineers to work on, as opposed to just one person trying to tackle all these issues. And some things on this thing can be done again by Tony. So we can save a lot of money by hiring a consulting firm, because you're only going to use them as you need them. They won't be on payroll all the time. And they have resources within their organization that can handle a lot of these issues. So I agree with you.
Commissioner Ferlito.
I had a question, like in the bylaws, it mentions the executive director, but Larry, you were saying,
It's-
just because it's written doesn't mean we have to have,
No.
to fill that position? Okay.
That's describing the, oh, it says I'm active. Okay, that's just describing that aspect right now. It doesn't mean that that position is required to be filled one way or the other, so that's the pleasure of the commission.
Commissioner Harris, you got a question?
But I know that's the way it's done in Ascension, but that consulting firm really excludes themselves from any projects. They are only sort of our consultant, watchdog over any other projects that we have. Is that?
Yeah, that is correct. They don't have the ability to do the project, but they will use their engineers to check it. They will make sure that the project's staying on budget. They will check and screen change orders. They will help assist with contracts to make sure that our interests are, put to the forefront. Also in developing projects, they will keep up with that, give us a 10 to 15-year outlook on projects, keep up with that, consider BCAs. They will create BCAs for us. They will essentially allow us to become completely independent and allow us to do our own projects through them, and they will use their expertise to not only get projects, formulate projects, be essentially our owner's rep. They will be our owner's rep, excuse me. No water. Yeah, thank you. So,
I know y'all, that's fairly recent that y'all started that. How many months have you been into that program?
EBR, don't y'all have someone who handles some of your major drainage and other big projects such as that?
Actually, we did have somebody on our stormwater master plan. We had a firm that was looking at the entire parish, but, and they cannot get involved with any projects that involve what they come up with from an evaluation aspect. It's got its pluses and minuses from my perspective, because, certainly to me, consultants will look at ways to try to find other projects to deal with, and they're gonna wanna deal with other, or submit design for projects, and we gotta tell them no, and they're not always real happy about that, Clement. But, again, I'm more about having one individual, me, to have, that answers to us, and that we could, have a little more direction. And quite frankly, looking at our budget situation, I wanna make sure that, we can make it fit within the dollar amounts that we're gonna need to make do with.
Yeah, as long as that one individual, so we did a search for a drainage director.
Yeah.
And it was like searching for a unicorn, and we couldn't find it, right? We couldn't find it. So I think the companies have the ability to give us the full array of services for which one individual may not be able to provide. If we had to check something, so let's say a BCA, or let's say we go out for a project and some company submits modeling and this and that. Who up here is going to review all that? Who has the expertise to review it all, other than Mark? So not to overload Mark and John's plate, we need somebody to be able to handle the technical part of these projects, and not only in their creation, but also in their management. Even with an executive director, I think we're going to eventually move to hiring a company too. I don't think that we can do it with just an executive director. So I just want to look at the option of not hiring one and having those duties of the executive director put towards the company. If the company does not have our best interest, guess what? Cancel their contract. We get another one. That's the beauty of it. And it's an annual contract. It's no one to have to fire. It's none of these personal things that we got into just a couple months ago. This is business. And I love just doing business. It's not personal. You got a job to perform, and here's your duties. And it's just a check. Here it is. I'm gonna give it to you, company. You're gonna perform these for us. If you can't, we're gonna find somebody else that can. And it's a lot easier. It's a lot more professional. And we're gonna need that expertise if we're gonna handle projects on our own, which is what I think the intention is. We're gonna have to have that expertise on our side. And no one on this commission, I believe, has the time to sit there and go over all these projects and do all of that. And so having a company, I think we're gonna have to be required to have that anyway.
Commissioner Harrell, you like to comment on this?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to lean with Fred's answer on that. Unfortunately, I deal with, on a daily basis, about $250 million a day I'm dealing with in Livingston. And if I need help, I have consultants that I hire, or engineering firms. Matter of fact, Mr. O'Neill has done work for us, and we use them, and then we move on to the next project. But I feel, I manage everything in Livingston. I feel we're better off doing that and have one person that answers to all of us. And then when you do a project, you're gonna have an engineering firm. They're gonna be there, they're gonna be there, the experts, and then let our executive director just coordinate. That's my opinion on it. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Neill, you had a comment on this?
I want to say it's an
discussion?
innovative idea. It's a very innovative idea, and there are more than just Ascension Parish that does this kind of thing. I would say that I think several of us between the executive committee and folks that have led these committees have understood the strain of doing work for ARBC since 1/1 of '23. And I would suggest, or I would posit the theory that most of the projects we would engage in would include funding for engineering and design, where those folks would have to answer to somebody, would have to demonstrate the proof and provide supporting documentation. They would have to be out for our best interest, or those contracts would allow for us to move on and potentially penalize them if they didn't do a good job. I would also say that I like the idea of a centralized face and voice that represents this entity that is not a, and I don't want to say this in a pejorative way, a hired gun, because I am an engineering consultant, so I don't want to think of myself that way. I would also say, Commissioner Pointmont, we could go ahead and move to advertise for this, and based on the applicants that we receive, we decide not to move forward and say, the unicorn is too difficult to find, we're going to explore another way to have ARBC managed on a day-to-day basis. So I think we could ride two horses with one rear end, if you know what I mean. At least initially, go ahead and see what we bring back when we cast our net out there. And then from there, if we find out this is just a little too difficult, or we can't find that, like you said, unicorn, then perhaps we revisit that. But I would also say that, quote unquote, putting the brakes on things at this point, just from a personal perspective, the work that I've put in, and it's unpaid. I know we get $100 a month as an appointment, but I've foregone that payment. I would love to get somebody in here that has responsibility for it and would assume control of it on a day-to-day basis, that we could then answer, we could hold them accountable for us. But that's, again, I think it's a fantastic idea that's worth considering, but I think we could do both. We could still travel down both avenues at the same time, so.
Okay. Further discussion, Commissioner Quimall?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. Listen, I'm throwing this out for discussion, but I would like to move in parallel so we can compare the two. Let's look at what it would cost for a company. Let's get some general ideas. Let's take some of these executive director duties and see what that looks like as we're looking for the unicorn, just in case we can't find the unicorn. Because this is a specialty, in my opinion. And there's just not a lot of people out there that do it. And if and with the tight labor market, people with specific skills are gobbled up quickly, and they get paid a tremendous amount of money. And so I would just like to work in parallel to see what that may look like, just in case we don't find that unicorn.
Commissioner Harrell, comment?
I will support that 100%. Let's move forward both ways, parallel.
Okay.
Are we gonna call this the Unicorn Hunting Committee?
I don't see it as a unicorn myself.
We need to have discussion about it.
So, can we discuss, the salary range of this executive director? I mean, it's been thrown out there.
Different numbers, I mean,
Yeah, Larry, I mean, different numbers,
and it's just a range, so it's one of those things. I guess a unicorn gets a pretty high premium, I guess.
They do.
Commissioner Harris,
The number that I heard discussed was 130 to 180. In the private sector, 180. In the public sector, that may be good pay because of the benefit, the retirement package that comes with that. And that's some reason all y'all work for government is because of that retirement package. You get half your money after you retire. But 180 in the private sector is pretty skimpy. So I would think 130 to 180, depending on the qualifications.
Is that, you have some questions?
Well, I think, I'll click
Yeah,
first.
130 to 160 was my number, so we're kind of within the range, especially on the lower end. It sounds like we're matching up. But Gary, what do you think that typically goes for?
I was going to say, Mr. Bankston, I believe, helped us initially with wide range numbers based on previous executive directors and then some other examples. I think he pulled from some publicly available, there's a website, I'm not sure if any of you guys are familiar, or any of you commissioners are familiar with it, but you can actually punch in a salary range and it'll show you state employees, because of sunshine laws, or not the actual names of the employees, but the positions that they hold. So you can sort of look at a state agency level, and a lot of you folks deal with state level administrators and whatnot, and understand what they're getting salary-wise and how that would maybe relate to these job requirements, which is where this salary range sort of fed from, I believe.
The levy districts, as well as if you go to the civil service website, you can put in categorical areas, and it'll give you, and you kind of look at what's going on at DOTD as well as CPRA, and some of those you can get some salary ranges from that. So you may find this to be an adequate number.
And again, this is a negotiation point in terms of the advertisement. I don't think it'd be hard and fast. I believe that would be part of the negotiation based on the unicorns that flew into our net, so to speak. But does anybody have any issues with that range that's as discussed? Is everybody? Okay.
I think it's good. All right.
So I have a motion to make it 130 to 180, and then post this on various websites for consideration.
So first of all, everybody's good with the description? You've had a chance to look over the description, the qualifications, the roles, responsibilities? Okay. Everybody's good with the salary range? Can I get a motion on the salary
I'll make a
range?
motion.
Gary?
Second.
Second. By Mr. Parker. All right. All in favor? Any opposed? All right. So if we can go ahead and get this out. Go ahead.
Do we want to
Commissioner
take some
O'Neill.
action to explore consulting costs to provide similar services, to speak to President or Commissioner Pointmot's request as well?
Sure, absolutely.
I didn't say I wanted to do that.
No,
I'm
we're
joking.
doing this in parallel and.
Would y'all want the executive director committee? Clint, do you want to work on that with me to
Yes.
just absorb that as part of the next step of the work we're doing?
Correct.
Okay.
So,
We're
yeah,
happy to
I don't know if we need motion to do, action to do it. I mean, I don't mind taking it, it's just a committee action that we can direct in the committee, but.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, next step, next.
All right.
Status of proposing the budget.
All right, our next item is status of proposing the budget for 2023 through 2024.
I'm not sure what action was needed.
Do we need an action, Tony, on this?
What was
We don't need
needed?
any action, we just need to take some action, before June 30th on getting a proposed budget.
So remind us of the concerns. You deal with this day to day. Mr. Bailey, feel free to chime in.
Before June 30th, I'd like to try to get a budget somewhat adopted as part of the legislative auditor's requirements. And if we're not certain about our income and what it's gonna be looking like, we can stick with sort of what we have right now.
Okay.
And then we can amend it as soon as we find out what income that we'll be receiving. We can always amend it anytime by the board.
The challenge is, it's been kind of a moving target. Some of what we thought and hoped may not be, but nevertheless, we can go back with what we had before
Yes.
and amend in the future. Okay.
So is it correct, Tony, that if you took the amendment number 2 from 2022 to 2023 and just adopted that, that would be sufficient?
Yes,
Okay, so what she's saying is,
Okay.
this particular amendment that we looked at, which was amendment number 2, if the board adopts that particular amendment for next year's 23-24 budget, at least you'll have a budget in place prior to June 30th.
Should we just add 10% down across the board? Or-
Well,
I don't think anything got stagnant.
the difficulty in doing that is the legislative auditor is very particular about you tinkering with amendments down the line. Is that a fair way to say it?
well, we can't be, over by 10% of any line item. That's how come we approve these increases in this budget.
You,
Is that what you're just talking about?
right. So, I
Yeah.
mean, if you took these numbers and it has salaries, and because of the fact, even though we're gonna have a potential increase, because was not the amount that was being paid, it was only 103,000, but the fact that we have a number of months that we may not have any income, any executive director, I think for the purposes of what she needs to have done before June 30th, that, if you adopt amendment number 2 budget, we'd have something in place and be compliant with what she has to have done.
Yeah,
Make a motion to adopt amendment 2 right now.
okay.
I have to put it in the paper. I have to
You
publish it in the
advertise.
paper.
You advertise, that's right.
The income, the expenses.
Yes, okay.
Has to go in the paper
So the
first, so
next
that's why I'm
board-
the
saying,
next meeting,
y'all
we'll do-
adopt it at the next
okay.
meeting, I'll have
All
it
right.
ready.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Next item is discuss the schedule and meeting place for our next meeting in June 2023. I think it might be, I don't know if Livingston's up for it, but we're,
And it's gotta be as nice as this.
yeah.
It's not. It's close, but it's not.
It's close, but it's not, it's close enough, that's good.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
we have, I have bullhorns. Everybody can just pick up the bullhorn and talk. It'll be fine.
So we need to, Tony, what do we need?
The date, Mark, do you know that it's gonna be available?
No, but I'll know that in the next hour or two.
Okay,
Or depends on how long the meeting is today, but I can let you know by this afternoon.
easy.
okay.
All right, so Mark, please let us know, and we'll get that lined up.
It's $100 a head.
Okay,
I asked
we
for
might-
as many guests
we
as we
might
can
have it in our
have.
budget.
We said free, not free, we're not coming.
All right, moving on to, do I have any public comments? Any more board discussion on this before we move on to new business? We've covered a lot. Okay, moving on to new business. So, Commissioner
I'm
Brett?
sorry, is it June 20th is the next meeting? Is that confirmed? I just want at least the date.
So it's gonna be the 20th, yes, June 20th,
Same time if we can?
10 a.m.
Okay. So Mark will tell us if different, and Tony, just pass it
We
around.
do have easier parking, I'll say that.
Easier parking.
Oh, really? That can complicate it.
Heard that.
Did we get
There was a
searched
comment
too?
about, he said it's easier parking.
We do have easier parking.
Okay, all right. Moving on to new business. Okay. Under new business, first item is to renew the GeoQuery ARBC website email contract. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at that. I emailed that to you all. It's pretty straightforward. Tony works with them more directly. It's just keeping our website updated. It's not any fancy creating or redesigning anything. But from time to time, you do need it, and they've been doing it for a while. Can I get a motion on the floor to approve this? Commissioner Harris, second by Mr. Bailey. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Public comments? Okay. Next item on the agenda. I was about it's lunch.
We're getting there, son. We're getting there.
So, is to renew the J. David Shoptaw ARBC CPA contract. Ms. Tony, can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, David's been working for the commission longer than I have, and we work well together. I put everything in Quicken, Reconcile, and then I send everything to him. He re-enters it into QuickBooks and produces the financial statements that you see. The commission, say if you ever get an executive secretary, someone that's doing something wrong, he would catch it. So it's always been great to have an outside person handling our financial information beside me.
So
And,
far, we've been good. This
Oh,
is
he's
work
great.
for ARBC.
Yes, he's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Could I get a motion on the floor to, I'm sorry.
I think Mr. Bailey already ready to make a motion.
Yeah, we can make that motion to approve it. Yes.
Okay, I got a motion on the floor by Mr. Bailey, seconded by Commissioner Harrell. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passed. All right, next item is to renew Mr. Larry Bankston, an associate, ARBC legal contract.
I want to talk about Larry contract.
Okay. Got it.
We need to approve it.
Okay, Commissioner Bailey has expressed that we need to approve Mr. Bankston's contract, and
I'll second that too.
okay, so in doing so, he submitted a contract, and there were some suggested language additions to help clarify this involved, and there was a handout that you were given, involved in the scope of work. So,
Let me
go ahead.
in the previous contract, it had an issue as it relates to me serving as an alternate on the LWI. That needs to be taken out. We don't have an LWI alternate situation anymore. And the other aspect of it, someone suggested it be a yearly contract as opposed to 3 years. I have no opposition to or complaint about that. And the other issue is some language change. There's a statement concerning commissioner's statement. That really is applicable for more contracts involving the Division of Administration. That section could be taken out. And finally, there's some language that someone likes better, which was contractors' cooperation. I'm good with any of those changes. Those
Okay.
are fine.
So if we can get those changed, then
Subject with these changes.
subject to these changes. Motion by Commissioner Bailey and second by Commissioner Harrell. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Yeah, I would just like to make a personal comment. You know, it's going to be hard to replace the institutional knowledge and knowledge of the Amite River Basin Commission any more than Mr. Bankston has. You could get another attorney, but they're not going to have the historical knowledge and never miss a beat during the whole process.
Well, thank you, appreciate that.
So, all right, moving on to our next item.
New business still. Is there any other new business?
Is there any other new business?
Yes.
Yes, okay, we got some new business. Commissioner Harris.
Okay, one of the things that Chip described whenever he had several comments about people flying into Baton Rouge, whenever you're coming in on the north runway to the airport, you fly over the canal, and it is impressive. I flew over that Sunday, and there are so many people that feel like if you're on any of these feeds, like I know several of y'all are, from the public, they don't realize, unless they drive down 61 or 964 and can see something, and now a lot of that's already stopped, so they feel like nothing is going on. So what I was proposing is that we do, it's almost a public service, but it's public awareness, where we would do a 5 to 10 minute video, where we would, a very brief history, and here's where it was, and, just 90 seconds of here's where it started, and here's where we are today, and then a detail of a flyover, here's where we're at on this, we're 75% here, the contract's been let on this bridge. It's the same thing that we always got every month from DOTD on their update, but this would be something that we would put on our website. If it's only, and I don't know how long it would be, but if it's only 5 minutes, we could get on some of the morning shows that play the whole thing, and it's something that ARBC's doing, and then we're informing the public. We can have a disclaimer on there, hey, it's not our fault, but
I was gonna say,
we can,
disclaimer about.
but so I did some just preliminary checking, high number, you're looking at 30 grand. I talked to Mark, he said we can do it a lot cheaper than that, but I know 30 would, I've already done some preliminary numbers, 30 would cover it. So I'd ask that we would authorize, budget up to $30,000 to produce that, educational video.
If you want to add an item to the agenda, we need to have a motion unanimous to add an item to the agenda.
This
So-
is new business? Oh.
Yeah, but it's an item that you're
Oh.
asking for action to
Oh.
take, so you have to make you need to make a motion.
See, that's why you're earning your money.
There you go. You want to add this item to the agenda for consideration of some video.
So I would like to, add this item to the agenda for, vote on if we could do this video.
Is there any opposition then?
That's your job, is there any
Yep,
opposition?
so, first of all, do we have any more board discussion? Commissioner Quintmall, would you like to make a comment on this?
Yeah, look, I think you could do it pretty easily, but I prefer drone, just flying it over with a drone and doing some video and then manipulating that video to shorten it up for the time frame for which we need. I do think it would be a great, had the ability to go down and actually walk down into the Comite Diversion Project, and it's something to see it from the sky, but it's something to walk down into it to understand that how massive it actually is. So
That's
I think
what
that
we
would be
talked
great.
about, a drone, part of it would be a
Yes.
drone flying through the
I think that would be really good.
Let's make the motion, and put it on the agenda.
Yep.
Yeah,
Let's do
that.
so
Okay,
is there any
so,
opposition to adding this item to the agenda?
Sounds like favorable, so can I hear a motion to add this to the agenda?
I
this
make a
item?
motion,
Second.
Commissioner Bailey
I make that motion with Mr. Harris.
and
on the agenda.
Commissioner Harrell, seconded.
Is there any opposition?
Is there any opposition? Hearing none?
It's added to the agenda. Now, you have
Now, who's gonna do,
So I can tell y'all, my engineering firm actually has a corporate communications department, and all of our municipal clients, for all their projects, we don't even charge them. We literally just do these videos. We always have our drone folks go through, and I'm not trying to advertise Fenstermaker. I'm just trying to say it does not cost.
he's not sure.
$30,000 is probably way more than what you need to have a drone go out there, get somebody in front of a camera, make some comments and do some montages. We do it for way less than that on a daily basis. So it's
Okay.
definitely
Commissioner
can be done.
Sir, I want to be the first one to thank you for doing this for ARBC at no charge.
yes, and no charge.
Greatly
Yes.
appreciated. And if you could have that for us by next Tuesday, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
I think the challenge is, I think it's easy to fly a drone over and target those spots, but then at the end of the day, it's the magic that happens that makes it media and user-friendly to the public, and kind of, that's not my specialty, I believe,
It's just a
This company can do it
but
for free.
Commissioner Harrell, I believe I'm conflicted from that, so don't worry.
No,
So
it's
what do we
free.
I put a top dollar amount on it and have some committee go deal with it.
yeah, so if we can maybe form a committee to look into this, Jack, you want to consider doing this? And perhaps we put a top dollar not to exceed, say, 30,000, anything?
Absolutely, yeah, that was just the budget. I know we could do it a lot cheaper than that,
Yeah,
but I've checked
please.
around to a
I mean,
production company.
This whole
We'll take
meeting
it.
has been about how much money we don't have, and now all of a sudden, we're going to spend 30 on a drone video.
Comment.
Commissioner Quinmont.
So, yeah, we probably just need a main committee instead of Senator, but let's send it to the committee to look at some options. Listen, I mean, if I can do an intergovernmental agreement with Ascension, I got all the capabilities of doing this. But let's see what our capabilities are, and we may not have to spend anything here. So, if we can just send this to committee, we can look at our options. Maybe we could possibly do an intergovernmental agreement to where I can get approval to do that for hardly
To
anything.
consider options.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll put it to the executive committee to look at these options, and before we set a price and go out looking abroad for this, that we might be able to do it among ourselves. Another positivity of having the parishes sitting together on one thing. Thank you, Commissioner Quinmont, Ascension Parish, for suggesting that. And maybe we can make that happen, so.
He did it for the match.
So,
Yeah.
what are we doing? Are we moving forward, or are we going to
Moving
talk
forward,
about it?
sending it to exec committee, I think to come up with a proposal
Okay.
after looking at it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
I have another new business.
Just one per meeting.
Commissioner Harris has another item to consider under new business.
I'd like to put on the agenda, add to the agenda, discussing Tony's pay.
Okay.
Is there a
Yes, sir.
second? Is there a second? to
Is
that?
there a second to this?
I second that.
Tony's
Tony's
compensation.
pay.
Oh, absolutely.
Our executive secretary, her salary?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I got a motion by Commissioner Bailey and a second. Do I have a second?
Right here.
Is there any,
Second by Commissioner Harrell.
is there any opposition?
Is there any opposition to this? Okay, motion passes.
It's added to the agenda.
Yep, it's added to the agenda next,
Okay, well, and you can tell by the number of emails you've got, she stays at it continuously. And what we're asking in this, especially in this interim time, but even going forward, the role that she plays in our success can't be overemphasized. So I would recommend a 7.5% increase in salary
at least.
as a minimum.
I second
I was
that.
thinking larger than that, but in the public sector, apparently that doesn't fly as well as it does. But so if 7.5, whatever y'all think,
That's fine.
It's good. I'd say that'd be a start to look at.
Yes, let's start. Mr. Quinmont?
I think we need to evaluate it and look at the duties and kind of do an evaluation, therefore we can come up with accurate, I don't know, just throwing out some numbers with no, I think we should send it to the committee so we can evaluate her duties and time, so we can appropriately compensate her for her actions, instead of just coming up with random numbers. I think we need to evaluate that, and we can do that in a very short period of time and have that ready for the next meeting for action. That would be my suggestion.
go ahead, you say.
I make a motion that we discuss this in executive committee and come up with some numbers that we can bring back to the next meeting.
It's a substitute motion by
Yep,
Lionel,
substitute motion
is there
by
a
Commissioner
second?
Bailey.
Is there a
Is there a
second?
second by
Mr.
Commissioner
Harrell.
Harrell? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, that's it? And motion to adjourn?
I'll make it.
Can I get a motion to,
General public comments?
yep, I'm
That's
sorry,
on there.
general public comments. Y'all hear me back in the back? Ben? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Wait, you're not done yet, you're not done yet. First off, does Commissioner Harris have any additional new business? I'm joking, Jack, I'm joking. No, I want to point out that the Nature Conservancy and RTI and some other folks have been asking if they could share some data, or they could get some data from Dewberry, who did our LWI study, to create some free mapping tools for us, which they are offering for free for every other LWI region. And so I know today we've been talking about, like you said earlier, the money that we don't have. This would be costless to us, and all we have to do is say, yes, Dewberry can provide you this data, and then they'll provide the maps to us on the back end. It's for NBS-related maps for a natural beneficial solution, which Jack was talking about earlier, what to do with potential gravel pits up there. I think if we talked to them about that and we told Dewberry to communicate with them and focus on something like that, I mean, to get it for free with everything else we're going to have to pay, I think it would be great. And I think all it takes is for somebody like us to say, somebody at the executive committee level say, yes, Dewberry, you can do that. So. All right, so I'm going to go as slow as I can because Clint's ready to leave. No, I'm kidding. I'd like to add that. Can we add that to the agenda? Can I make a motion to add that to the agenda to take an action to say
Okay, we got a
yes?
motion, but Commissioner O'Neill and Commissioner Harrell, you second that motion? Okay, second by Commissioner
Now
Harrell.
it's added, now it's added to the agenda.
Yep, so
I'd
that's
like
added
to-
to our agenda.
I'd like to make a motion that ARBC allows that Nature Conservancy RTI group to authorize Dewberry to share the data needed to create those maps for those MBSs.
I think we need to talk to them.
Okay, Commissioner Harrell, did you have a comment
I
on that?
think we need to talk to Dewberry about it and see what they think.
Yeah, I think you gotta
Right,
get with DOTD first.
DOTD, Commissioner Blaine.
Yeah, I
Commissioner
was just
Blaine.
about to say, depending on what that data is, it could be easily handled with a public records request. Very simply put. Now,
So-
the new model that they're developing for the watershed initiative, that's not gonna be available, public request or not. It's not a completed product, so we can't give that out. But the previous model has plenty of data in there that I think the Nature Conservancy can use.
So Ed, you're suggesting that we ask them to speak, or could we authorize Dewberry to have a conversation with this group just to see what they would need and then
So
from there?
according to Commissioner Blaine, it sounds like that Nature Conservancy RTI has to do, if they want to do this for us, is to ask a public records request from DOTD.
Because it's not actually ours.
Right, correct.
It's actually DOTD.
Well, what they did is they reached out to all the LWI regions, asking for permission to do this. And just saying, we'll talk to whoever's your modeling lead in that region to do it. So I think it was through Louisiana Watershed Initiative and OCD, they were offering to do this work.
So is that clear, Gary? Does that help us achieve what you're suggesting? Because what you suggested, using that for the abandoned gravel pits, that does sound good, making that connection and utilizing that resource. But do we have to do anything formal here in order to achieve that, Commissioner Sheets?
No, like I said, all they have to do is do a public records request. We
sorry.
can give them that model and they can run with it as much as they need to. It's a public product, so, if you give them guidance, they can run with it.
So we would just send them an email and say, please direct your request to DOTD and the modeling group over there to request whatever information you need. Or we
Put
could
in
direct them to
contact with me and
Commissioner
I'll be
Knight.
glad to help.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to let
Thank
an
you,
opportunity.
Commissioner Knight. I'm sorry, I apologize.
I just didn't want to miss an opportunity to create something that could be helpful down the road, especially something that didn't cost us anything. And we could show the public, hey, at least we're producing something that is, you can look and touch and feel and see it. So, anyway, thank you all. I appreciate it. So I don't know.
Commissioner Ferlito, you have a,
Is there a cost with the public records request?
No. No, not if it's, not if it has, it's just data.
is it E-data? Commissioner Quimall?
Yeah, usually there's a minimal cost for public service request, public records request. So there is a small amount. So, yeah, I'd just say we table this. It was great discussion. Maybe let's look at, see if we need to put an action item on the next agenda. If we need to, we can look into this as individuals at this point in time, and if there are actions needed, we'll hopefully consider that for the next agenda in June.
All right. Is there any more comments, board discussion? Commissioner Harrell?
I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Any opposed? Thank you.